Welcome to Boxing During Dinner. We're here at Energy Kitchen in Coral Gables, Florida. And we have lots to talk about. And I always say that, but today we really do have lots to talk about.
Yeah.
First things first, I just wanted to mention really quick, we'll get into it a little later. HBO and Golden Boy Promotions severing ties.
Yep.
Golden Boy exclusively on Showtime from here on out, at least as far as the cable network and the pay-per-views. Adrian Broner is going to be fighting in June on Showtime, so no more Adrian Broner on HBO.
Yeah.
And he just Instagrammed a picture that he got arrested here in Miami.
Yeah, as today, which is the 18th, a Monday. So by the time you guys see this,
You'll know all about
whatever the details are.
What happened. But so it's good news and bad news all around for everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
For everybody, but we'll start with the fight of the year thus far in 2013. Tim Bradley and Ruslan Provodnikov. What a great fight, David. I was at work watching it with Jesse Losala, and we just sat there and we were in awe of, with this fight. So many things. One, Provodnikov came out, trying to knock this guy's head off. Two, the heart of Bradley, the heart he showed throughout the fight. And I guess three, the story at the end was the decision, whether Provodnikov should have won, should he have lost, should the first and second round have been 10-8 rounds. What did you think watching it?
Well, before I even get to the scoring, I just want to say that I try not to be a guy of hyperbole, but this is one of the most dramatic fights that I have ever seen in person as a boxing fan. I haven't been around since the 50s, 60s, and 70s, so I can't vouch for what I saw or what people saw then. But what I saw on Saturday was one of the more incredible things, like you said. People want to talk a lot about Bradley's heart because he's the one who really had to dig deep to show it. But let's not forget that Ruslan Provodnikov also had his face chopped up looking like a hamburger.
And it's not too many fights that they interview the trainers of both these guys, Freddie Roach and Joel Diaz. And both of them, during their interviews with Max Kellerman in between rounds, both said that they were thinking about stopping the fight, which is ridiculous. I mean, that never happens. You have to go back to like the Thrilla in Manila, when Angelo Dundee was about to stop the fight, and then all of a sudden
Frazier's
corner throws in the towel. But yeah, it was dramatic, and the last 30 seconds of that fight, I thought Bradley won the fight. Albeit by 1 point, but I kept on telling Jesse, this could be like Chavez Taylor. Because Bradley was going all out in that last round. He was getting kind of careless, and he almost gets knocked out at the end.
Yeah, I thought Bradley had a good game plan for about the first 45 seconds of the 12th round, and then he started trading with Provodnikov again. And you have to give the guy credit, not on the strength of his game plan because it was not there, but you do have to give him credit for wanting to show the world that he's a guy who is not a pushover, that he's not Manny Pacquiao's accidental defeater, if you will. And I mean, how can you not have respect for either of these guys after the show that they put on? Bradley, in that fight, took away 5 years of my life and probably took off 5 years from his own career in the process.
When's the last time you saw somebody throw 1,000 punches in a fight?
Probably a Manny Pacquiao fight.
Often.
But I just, and I hate to take it to this point,
Sorry, I said,
take away from the hype.
Instead of saying that doesn't happen too often, I said that doesn't happen many often. I'm tired today. I'm really tired. But go ahead.
The type of fight that these guys were in, I believe, is a fight that they will never fully recover from. Neither of those guys are ever going to be the same fighters. I just don't see a scenario
and we've seen it happen time and time again with different fighters. The Mickey Wards, the Arturo Gottis and stuff after these wars, that they're never the same after that. And you could be right. This could happen to Bradley and Provodnikov.
Before you continue on, I just want to say, the drama. You think the first round, oh my gosh, Bradley's about to get knocked out. The second round, Bradley's about to get knocked out. Between there, then the 6th round, then again in the 12th, and there were other times where it really looks like Bradley, might have been chopping up Provodnikov to the point of no return. Provodnikov had that bad cut over his eye, so there's no saying whether or not the
one
rest
thing certain, Timothy Bradley cannot punch. I mean,
I'm going to disagree.
I think a fighter with more power in his hands, in his fists and more lower leg strength, probably would have knocked out Provodnikov.
I disagree.
He landed a lot of punches, hurt Provodnikov on a couple of occasions. If there's one thing Timothy Bradley did not do, I guess, more of in the fight, because I think he did it a couple times and it was effective, and he just stopped doing it, was to go to the body.
I disagree 100% with everything you just said.
So you think he's a hard hitter?
No,
'Cause
I don't.
he hasn't knocked out anybody in a long time.
I'm not saying he's a power hitter, but I disagree with the notion that he didn't go to the body. I think he attacked the body all night.
He did, but I think towards the end of the fight, he started headhunting on Provodnikov again.
Yeah, that I'll agree with.
And if he would have gone a little more to the body in the later rounds, when Freddie Roach was thinking about throwing in the towel, he might have forced Freddie Roach to throw in the towel.
I think body punching's work is done in the first half towards 3/4 of a fight.
Not necessarily. Not if you could take out your opponent late in the fight with a body shot.
Well, Timothy Bradley is. Let me go back to the point. He's not the type of guy who's going to take a guy out with a body shot in the late part of the fight.
With any shot.
But to take away the Bradley, yes, I'm not saying he's he is Provodnikov in terms of power, but look at what happened to Provodnikov's face in the body attack that he had, the consistent combinations he was hitting the guy in the face with. No, Bradley is not going to put a guy unconscious on the canvas, but he has enough power in his hands and enough pop on his punches to at least start chopping a guy up and get a TKO. And I think a lot of guys might have taken punishment to the extent that Bradley dished it out as well over the course of 12 rounds, and they might not have made it for the end of the fight.
I mean, he's not Kid Gavilan, and Kid Gavilan was one of the greatest fighters to ever live, but all his opponents would always say that Kid Gavilan, could not hit. I remember meeting Bobby Dykes, who fought Kid Gavilan. This was a tribute that they had to give Kid Gavilan here in Miami, and both Gavilan and Bobby Dykes, who have since passed away, they were both there. And Dykes told me this guy couldn't hit. I mean, he punched like if it was like a bag of feathers. And I'm not saying that Tim Bradley punches like if he had a bag of feathers, but I would have liked to have seen or to see a fighter with a little more power that makes Provodnikov respect the power and not come forward, because Provodnikov did not stop coming forward the entire fight. Needless to say, I still thought Tim Bradley won the fight.
Yeah, and I did too. That's one thing that people are discussing. Oh, what about in the first round when Bradley had slipped, and a lot of people think that should have been ruled a knockdown.
I saw that knockdown a few times.
Armando's cutting me off every single time I talk to him. I don't know if you guys recognize that. I think that could have been a knockdown, but even so, let's say that is a 10-8 round, or even some of the others where they give him 10-8 rounds. I didn't see a 114, 113 scorecard. I think that the rounds that Provodnikov really hurt Bradley are the ones that he won. Maybe one more than that, but I think this was an 8-4, 7-5 fight. Again, it's close. It's very close, but I think this is a fight that Bradley won.
Yeah, and Tim Bradley, in that first round when he gets nailed with that right hand, I don't think, at first I said, oh yeah, it was clearly a knockdown. I rewatched it a couple of times. It wasn't clearly a knockdown. I mean, he gets hit, kind of comes forward, kind of makes a movement, kind of goes to hold Provodnikov, and then he just ends up, kind of tripping and falls forward. Was it the effect of the punch?
Probably.
Probably. Was it the effect of the punch and him tripping and being off balance? Also, I mean, it wasn't a clear knockdown that you're like, oh my God, that's a 10-8 round.
Yeah,
Harold Letterman, and I'm not saying Harold Letterman is always, on point with his scorecards, because, a lot of the times he's not. A lot of the times he's on point. But Harold Letterman didn't score at a 10-9 round, and this is a guy who's been judging for, the better part of his life.
Yeah. No, I'll actually agree with that sentiment, but, it's... Wow, though. I mean, regardless of what we agree or disagree on, like, that fight was insane. And I'll be watching it on replay as many times as I can
and aside from the argument on scorecards, the stuff that people were tweeting the most was comparing it to the Rios Alvarado fight last year.
Which is incredible that if anybody had predicted, it's one of those things where everybody's going to retroactively say they knew where they were when they watched Bradley versus Provodnikov, but they're all going to basically be watching it on DVR, because the truth of the matter is very few people turned in. They had 2,500 people in attendance in Bradley's backyard. People didn't see this fight, and no one saw this type of fight coming. I don't know if we're going to make the same point, but now that Top Rank essentially is the HBO and stuff like that, this is probably the best thing that could have happened to them over the weekend, if indeed they had known that Showtime was, essentially going to own Golden Boy or vice versa. Because now you have Bradley, Provodnikov, Rios, Alvarado, Marquez, and Pacquiao. You can literally throw any single one of those guys in together, and you're going to get something worth watching.
I mean, when Steven Espinoza went to Showtime, you knew the writing was on the wall.
Sure.
You knew Golden Boy was going to be 90%, 95% of their time on Showtime, and that Top Rank was not going to go back to Showtime ever again. So today, today is Monday, is when they announced that Golden Boy and HBO will not be doing any joint ventures anytime soon.
Yeah.
it was expected, and you know, and a couple people did mention on Twitter today that Top Rank doesn't do many cards on Showtime. You know, they're almost exclusively HBO, but they haven't come out and said it, or HBO hasn't come out and said it. You know, like, hey,
to
you know,
the point
we
where
split.
this is kind of a formality.
I don't really think it hurts boxing. It hurts it in the sense that what happens if a Golden Boy fighter fights a Top Rank fighter?
Well, that just won't happen now. To me, and this is something I said to you before the show, not the best comparison ever, but this to me is now like having the WCW and the WWF, like those two professional wrestling organizations that are both, you know, very much on their own networks separately with their own fighters. Everybody knows who they are, but they're just kind of accepting the fact that those guys are never going to fight. Now, this to me is just kind of, let's say the Top Rank and Golden Boy feud somehow cools off. Well, now they also have the agreement with the networks that are showcasing their fights that may not actually follow through. So, you know, you're not going to see a Golden Boy Top Rank fight for quite some time now.
Right, and it's a shame because, you know, you'd like to see Brandon Rios, Danny Garcia fight, or fights of, you know, of that caliber. And now it's not going to happen. And now you have Adrian Broner, who a lot of people wanted to line up against the Gamboas and
there goes
the
that.
Brandon Rioses of the world. And
you will not see.
Well, let's
not say. I mean, you may see Gamboa versus Broner because Gamboa's with, you know, SMS Promotions and 50 Cent, so he's kind of like,
he could go either way. But it seems like Top Rank is giving the 50 Cent fighters more opportunity.
Sure, but you know, also too, let's consider that maybe this is a good thing for the Lou DiBellas of the world, the 50 Cents of the world, because HBO now has content, right? The Gary Shaws, because HBO now, unless they want to be completely buried by what's happened at Showtime, they need to start investing again in fights. And if they think that they can get good fights to be made, similar to the way ESPN's model is, and I can't believe we're saying this right now, but ESPN is focused on just putting on good matches. If HBO focuses on that, draws in the Lou DiBellas, the, you know, Gary Shaws of the world and stuff like that, and starts making good fights, that's good for these promoters too. So it may work out.
Yeah, it's going to develop interestingly throughout the next months and years to come.
Right.
But before we go, Orlando Cruz, who we mentioned last week, fought in Kissimmee, Florida, beat the crap out of Alan Martinez.
6 rounds.
Now positioned himself to fight Mikey Garcia. Will it be a good fight? You know, the way Orlando Cruz looked on Friday, he may give him a fight. I mean, I still think Mikey Garcia wins that bout. But Orlando Cruz proving that he's no pushover.
Speaking of Cruzes, Jesse Cruz, a good friend of Boxing During Dinner, wins a 6-round split decision victory over. I'm gonna forget his name, but he won on Friday night at the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Hollywood. And Jesse looked good. Ricardo Hernandez. Jesse had his opponent hurt in the final round, and that was definitely enough to seal the victory for him. Jesse looked good.
And on the same card, which I only got to see through YouTube, but David saw one of the most brutal knockouts I think he's ever seen in his life. This weekend,
I saw the fight of the year on HBO. The night before, I saw the knockout of the year. Yunieski Gonzalez knocks out Roland Bryant in the 8th round with just a counter right hook that collapsed. I'm losing all my names tonight. Collapsed Roland Bryant at the knees, and just
I saw the video. Referee Sam Burgos was about to give this guy
extremely
CPR.
dramatic. I mean, with the biggest show of hands. It was one of the most dramatic knockouts I've seen. It's on our Facebook page if you want to see it.
And we'll see if we bring Sam Burgos to talk about the knockout.
Yeah, it's a possibility.
We'll see you next week on Boxing During Dinner.